Hello builders, and welcome to another Planet Zoo building video with me, your buddy Stone. In this one I have for you the Highland cattle and the Alpine goats. Very high-end animals around here, or maybe just high in altitude. Alright, that was a bad joke, I admit. And you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, that was a joke? Well, you know what, it was my attempt at one, and bad humor is all I have left. That and building. But I'm changing it, and I'm not taking it out, we're leaving it in. So, back to the building, and my commentary on it. So right now, we're just doing a little bit of rock work and some terrain editing. The barn in the background was already built in another video. I decided just to copy the barn. It was from our alpaca and our sheep exhibit. If you want to see how I built that barn, the link to that video will be in the description down below. And if you like the barn, you can also find it on the workshop. That link will be in the description below as well. So you can take that and add it to your own little farms if you want. Speaking of the workshop, there is a big old zoo here and lots of buildings in it, and the community has been requesting me to upload more to it. So be sure to follow me on the workshop as I will be adding more of my creations there soon. And one day far, far in the future, when I eventually finish my project of getting every animal in the zoo, then this zoo will be added as well. What computer will be able to run it? I don't know. I don't even think this computer will be able to run it for much longer, but we're trying. Oh boy, we're trying. And that was a long tangent about the barn. I just realized I should be talking more about the building. That's what everyone's here to see. So yes, the first step is to do your terrain work. Right now I'm just creating an exterior cliff for the edge of the area, mostly to hide the previous zone, but also to act as a barrier for the animals. I always like my barriers to look more natural and not man-made, so the animals don't look like they're in a cage. Of course, that can't always be avoided, but I try to make this look as natural as possible whenever I can. That way the animals are happy and joyful, and when animals are happy, then the guests are happy, because the guests notice when animals are miserable in their environments. Now, I don't normally like having this flat of an exhibit, but for the cattle it seemed to make sense, as they are grazing animals and they need all the space they can for their grazing. And here you'll be seeing me putting a barrier in the middle of the river. You might be thinking, Stone, won't the animals just be able to escape through that river? And you'd be right. In reality, they probably would, but I'm not going to worry about it too much, as there's a little trick you can do in Planet Zoo where you take elephant grass and later you'll see me be flipping it upside down and hiding it in the water, and that will prevent the animals from clipping through it. It's not a trick I like using too much in the zoo, as it doesn't look very natural, but in this case I will. In reality, if the cattle want to cross the river and go into the donkey habitat, they are free to do so. I'm sure the animals would get along. But for the sake of the way the zoo works in this game, we will just prevent them from crossing that barrier. And speaking of barriers, let's get on doing the exterior one. Now, I could have just done a boring old fence going all the way around it, but that's not my style. You know that. I like doing things a little bit more different. So I'm just going to put in a couple rocks here and there just to really break up the fence work. Like I always say, more rocks equal more good, because I just love putting rocks all over the place. It just makes everything look a little bit more natural. Although I would come to regret this decision ever so slightly once I add the goats in, because goats love to climb. And guess what? They were jumping out of the exhibit. So I had to double up on the fences and make them a bit higher, and I had to make the rocks a little steeper. But you'll see me do those changes a little bit later. For now, let's continue on with this. I'm just putting a path through the exhibit for the guests to take, but they do have the ability to walk anywhere they want in the exhibit with the new DLC and updates. But I still like having a path going through it, just to encourage the guests to go in certain directions. And before I get too much into the detailing, I just want to paint the terrain with some broad strokes to make it look nice and green, and come down to the beach and add some sand. And from there we'll do a little bit more detailing later. I always like to start with a basic brush stroke first. And now it's time to add that elephant grass I talked about earlier. This will prevent the animals from actually crossing the terrain, but that looks a little boring, so let's add some rocks in here, because I always love adding rocks. And later we'll add some trees and some vegetation to really make it look like a proper little river. And after I get the big chunky rocks in, I always love adding the details with these ones. These little aquatic pebble rocks, as I call them. It's always nice to add these to your rivers or to the bottom of cliffs. It just adds that little sprinkle of detail that you need to bring a zoo to life. And with most of the rock work done, it's time to quickly come in and add some feeders and some toys for our animals, and from there we're going to build around with all the plants. For these hay feeders, I decided, well, let's just color them yellow like hay and just put hay bales everywhere to make it look like the animals are, well, eating the hay. Now the idea for this whole area is it's supposed to be one big farming community with the animals, but we also need some farms. So let's create some farms out of some mulch as a base. From there we'll add a couple little barriers to decorate it, and then we'll just cover it with different kinds of plants that make it look, well, like a farm field. And to top it all off, we have these scarecrow feeders which will attract the animals over to it to make it look like they're grazing from the plants in the field. Aha, you thought I was probably going to be using rocks for this little cliff, but no, not this time. I decided to be a little bit different and add in these wooden logs as a way to hold back this terrain. I do like using rocks, I will admit this, but sometimes I like being a little bit different. And for the base of the farm fields, I'm using buffalo grass because I feel like it looks a little bit like wheat. And after that, we'll be using blue stem grass to fill in the rest of it. It's probably the closest thing I can find that looks like wheat in the game. And with one field done, it's time to move on to the top one. But first we gotta finish building this barrier. We're just gonna put a little top to it and then some extra braces in. And after that we'll just make another beautiful field of plants. Before working on these farm fields, I never had much use for these Arctic hull pieces. But here they seem to work perfectly as a means of holding back the wall. I just love their makeshift design and it just seems to work here so well. And with another farm field complete, it's time to come in and add all the big old trees to the habitat. I always like doing the big trees first before all the small plants, as it helps with the flow of the building. And because I like each zone of the zoo to look like its own self-contained unit, we're going to come in and add in a bunch of trees to the edge of the map. That way, from the guest perspective, it looks like this whole farming community is nestled in the middle of a forest, which just helps that overall look I'm going for. But with all the trees done, it's time to pay attention to the rest of the habitat. We're going to come in and add some grasses everywhere, some bushes, especially adding in details to the fence. It does look a little boring otherwise without all the plants around it. But probably one of the most important parts of this habitat is to create a meadow. And what better thing to do with a meadow than put grasses everywhere. And once that grass is in, we're going to go in with some flowers and just add a little splash of color to it. While in the middle of adding some plants, I decided to add in one more little field right over here, just to help fill the space. But instead of a wheat or hay field, I decided to go with some corn. Mostly because I felt like I haven't been using corn that much in the rest of the farming community area, and it just felt right to add a little bit extra right in here. Fun fact about the corn, or the maize as it's called in the game, is you can actually use it to prevent animals from escaping. So just stick it around the edges and boom, you got a nice organic fence. And now that that side project is complete, let's get back on to creating our beautiful little meadow. And while we watch past me build this habitat, how about I talk about some channel updates. First, I want to thank everyone who's enjoyed these builds. I've always loved making them, and I love reading comments for you enjoying them. But I feel like this zoo might be ending its life soon. My current computer just isn't strong enough to handle the strain of this save file much longer. I do have an Australian and New Zealand section of the zoo being built right now over on my Twitch channel. Once I finish that section, those videos will be coming up on this channel as well. But once that section is done, I might have to retire the zoo as the file is too laggy to really do much else in it. But don't worry, even if this file can't continue, then I have other cool zoo ideas in the works, such as a magic zoo, where I can build a whole zoo on floating islands with beautiful bridges connecting them all. And I do want to eventually get some other games up on the channel as well. I can't just all be playing zoo, now can I? Any game that lets me build and be creative is something up my alley and I will love it. So if you have suggestions, let me know down below of anything you want to see me build. But yeah, that is a quick channel update, not much else to say. Other than that, there's just more videos and more ideas I have that I need to get done. But it's always hard to find the time to do all the editing for these videos and all the ideas I have. And now I make good on my promise earlier where I said I would have to adjust the fence. Now that we have the animals inside the habitat, it became clear that they could easily escape it. So I have to come make it a little bit higher and adjust the rocks so that the goats can't escape. Whew, that was quite the ordeal, I tell ya. Just trying to figure out where the goats could escape from was a real pain. I just had to end up just adjusting the entire fence to make it work. But we got there in the end. Now that that's all done, let's start decorating the outside of the habitat. Just this beautiful little path we have above the river. It's just a beautiful path for guests to walk in case they don't want to walk in all that manure that's inside of the cattle and goat habitat. Because I like my barriers look as natural as possible, even when they are just for guests. I come in and add in a few logs just to prevent people from falling into the river. I always prefer that natural look whenever I can use it instead of using simple old boring fences. In retrospect, I probably could have saved myself a lot of heartache if I just put corn around all the fences. That way it would prevent the animals from ever jumping out of it, as corn acts as a natural barrier. And now is a good time to mention that if you want your name engraved on one of these many signs around the zoo, just give me a follow over on Twitch and I'll make sure your name is in the zoo. And if you're feeling so inclined, feel free to subscribe to me over on Twitch and I'll put your name on a statue around the zoo with a quote of your choosing. But look at the time now. Thank you for watching, but we're nearing the end of the video. And I should probably do that whole YouTube thing where I ask you to subscribe and like and all that. Well, I guess I just did, so you know what? Go do all that. That's right, I'm not politely asking, I'm telling you. Go hit that button. Go do it. Hit it right now. Move your mouse over that button and click it. And subscribe. And like it. And tell me how much you like the video too. Okay then, I believe we have an understanding. Now what I want you to do is open that description and click the Twitch link and follow me over there. And if you don't have a Twitch account, well, why don't you go make one? You ever think about that? Yeah, go make a Twitch account and follow me. That's right. Okay, I don't know what's with me with my recording today, but I'm feeling super sassy. Hope you enjoyed that little rant. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm going to leave you with one final flyby of the habitat. And with that, have a good one, builders, and have a great day. Bye.